It's always exciting when theme parks are planning out their new attractions, and sometimes they give us a peek behind the curtain into what they might be working on in the form of attraction surveys. And in this case, 3 surveys were just sent out to season pass holders of Cedar Point, Kings Island, and Carowinds. And of course, coaster enthusiasts being the nerds that they are, got a hold of it, posted them online, and now everyone knows about it, so we're gonna talk about it.
Yeah, and as of when we're recording this, it's just kind of the start of the 2024 season. So everyone's going out and trying out like brand new attractions that are just now opening. Meanwhile, parks are like, we're looking 3 years ahead.
5 years ahead.
5 years ahead.
A great example of this is back in July. You might remember Canada's Wonderland sent out a survey about some possible roller coasters they were considering. The one that caught everyone's attention was paying homage to Volcano at King's Dominion, except you're shooting a roller coaster out of Wonder Mountain. And now we're actually seeing construction over at Canada's Wonderland around Wonder Mountain. So clearly the results of that survey were interesting enough that they took that into consideration, and they're hard at work for, I'm assuming, a new roller coaster for next year. So
yeah, and you know, we don't know any details about it or anything yet. Like, again, these are more just to like gauge interest. Like, you don't know necessarily what manufacturer they're gonna go with, what the stats are gonna be, like or even when it will open.
Yeah,
so it's
any of this can change, and that's important to note. They're looking at all these different age demographics. They're trying to figure out what is gonna work best for their park. So of the options that we're gonna talk about, there is no guarantee that any of these will happen.
Yeah. You might get none.
So for each of these parks, they sent out 4 different options, and not all of them are roller coasters. So let's start with Carowinds. The 4 that they mentioned specifically were a 300-foot dive coaster, so that's assumed to be by B&M, a Mock Rides water coaster, a super flume, and a family thrill coaster with multiple launches and staying low to the ground.
So let's talk about the family thrill one, because I think this was actually mentioned in all 3 as an option. And just based off of looking at the track, and granted this is just concept art, you know, we don't know for sure, but we're saying it kind of looks like maybe Zamperla track.
Or Intamin.
Or Intamin track, yeah. I think that could work at any of these parks. We'll go into them more like as we go down, but I've seen like more of a focus shift on family kind of coasters at a lot of these thrill parks, because they're realizing that families are the ones that spend money. Yeah. More so than, you know, like people our age who go into a season pass and, you know.
Well, and also the price of steel has gotten so high up. Like, you know, these big, huge, towering thrill rides have gotten really, really expensive. And so sometimes a family thrill coaster, you can still drive an attendance shift while saving a little bit of money, you know, and still do something really high quality.
Dollywood proved this with Big Bear Mountain, which was obviously a huge investment, but it's like one of those rides that everybody enjoys. I think that any one of these parks would do well with this. I think Carowinds would do nicely with this.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing with Carowinds, and I've said this, Canada's Wonderland has kind of a similar effect, where Carowinds has some really good standout roller coasters, but then the rest, it's fluff. Not all of them are super high quality. Kind of feels like filler, you know, they help round out the collection, but they're not attractions that you want to do over and over and over again. Something like this, I think, would be like a step below those high thrill coasters, but I would probably rather ride this than like Vortex or Nighthawk or Hurler, you know? So I'm actually really excited about this possibility, because they also have prime real estate for it should they choose to go this direction with the plot of land that Dinosaurs Alive used to occupy. That's over by Afterburn and near Camp Snoopy. They have the room for this.
I'm trying to think. As far as family coasters, I mean, they have like a Wild Mouse.
They have a Mine Train.
They have a Mine Train.
And then some rides in Camp Snoopy. But I mean, that's kind of it as far as like family coasters go.
Yeah, I think this would be a great fit.
I actually really like this edition. Of the ones that we talked about, this is my favorite roller coaster.
Yes. And then after that, we look at 2 different water rides, which that is a glaring thing that Carowinds is missing. They don't have any water attractions. They don't even have one, do they?
They took them all out. Yeah. They used to have a boat ride. Copperhead Strike is now where that used to be. They used to have a Rapids. That recently closed. If you want a water-based attraction, you have to go to Carolina Harbor. So of everything on this list, a water ride is by far the thing they would most benefit from. It's just, do you go the water coaster or do you go the super flume? Personally, I like the flume.
Really?
The flume looks awesome.
The flume looks really, really cool. It might be more marketable than on a water coaster, because there's something about that flume, like the way it looks, that is so like, whoa, it's huge.
Yeah, well, and it just rounds out their collection. Like, I like the idea of a water coaster. That actually would be the first in the Cedar Fair chain if they chose to add that. But I don't think it has to be a roller coaster. Like, I think just a good old-fashioned log flume would be fantastic at Carowinds. It can get really hot down there.
Well, and it would probably save them some money to like invest then in something else. eventually.
I think my whole thing with the water rides, I realize that I do not speak for everyone. You know, this is why they reach out to a huge range of season pass holders. But I feel like with the water rides, it's an attraction that I would do once, maybe per visit, but then that's it. Versus like the family thrill coaster, I would just keep getting in line for that. You know, I would do it multiple times a visit.
Yeah, but you know, if their prime season is summertime, it makes sense to have something to cool down when you're in the dry park. But...
It does. Let's talk about the Giga Dive Coaster, because actually Carowinds is not the only one that had this option. Kings Island had it as well. And I have the same thought with both of them. And that is, why?
It doesn't make a ton of sense.
Both parks have a Giga Coaster. I understand that a dive coaster is fundamentally different than the ride experience on Fury or Orion. And a dive coaster, I think, could work pretty well at both parks, but you don't need to go 300 feet. It seems kind of redundant when the big thing with both of those already existing rides is a near vertical 300-foot drop.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what this would be.
Yeah.
It's just a little strange.
No, I would agree with you. Like, if they do want to do a dive coaster, I don't think they need to go that tall at all. I don't think it makes sense at Kings Island at all, considering they have one at Cedar Point, which is only a few hours away.
I mean, it's still 4 hours, but yeah, I guess my whole thing is like the Giga aspect just seems like a extra marketing push.
Yeah.
But you could get a just as good ride experience if you went with something in the mid-sized range. We love Emperor, and that is under 200 feet.
Yeah, and then again, that's money that you save on that attraction that you could put towards something else.
So let's move on to Kings Island. They had the Giga Dive. They had an indoor coaster. They specifically cite something like Revenge of the Mummy, a Universal.
Although the concept art didn't really look much like it.
No, it looked like something different. They had the family thrill coaster from Carowinds, and they had a Mock Rides Extreme spinning coaster.
So I want to just talk about the Extreme Spinner right off the bat, because we've said that that would be so cool for that plot of land where Vortex used to be.
Yeah, we've specifically said we would love to see a Mock Extreme Spinner at Kings Island. That would probably be our #1 choices, honestly.
Yes. However, the iteration of the Extreme Spinner that they have presented is like kind of like a shuttle coaster, and it doesn't look great.
Another coaster enthusiast actually made a recreation of the rendering that Cedar Fair came out with, and it's a great recreation. However, it made me even more confident that this is not it. Like, this is a very weird design where you essentially would launch out, you'd go into a stall, you'd continue launching upside down, which is very bizarre. I think the whole marketing thing with this would be is this the world's first inverted launch. And then you go up this huge spiral tower, and then you roll back, and that's it. It's a very narrow roller coaster.
It's not good for capacity, first of all. And Cedar Point had this on there as well. Neither park can deal with that.
Yeah.
I don't think. Like, even if it had like switch track, I still think it wouldn't be enough. I think they need something more full scale.
Yeah,
I really do.
I also just like, there's so much potential with the Mock Rides Extreme Spinning Coaster.
They're so
and
good.
I feel like this is just they're turning into a gimmick. That's what this feels like, it's a gimmick.
An actual fantastic ride experience can speak for itself.
Sure.
It doesn't need to be gimmicky like that. Then the other one was that same family thrill coaster. It's actually the exact same rendering. They are putting in a family coaster right now. Granted, it's definitely a lot smaller than the one.
Very different.
Yeah.
But actually in the concept art, they show like a spike. And actually, I would say Kings Island has a much better family coaster collection than Carowinds. Kings Island has a very well-rounded lineup where even the not as high thrill coasters, me as a coaster enthusiast, I'm like, yeah, absolutely, I'll go ride that.
Adventure Express?
Amazing. I love Adventure Express.
Love that ride.
Yeah, so they could go this direction, but I would hope that if they did, it would not be in the Vortex plot of land. I feel like you need a big thrill coaster there, because that's what Vortex was.
Agreed.
So the last one was the indoor coaster. And this is interesting, because Kings Island has an indoor coaster with Flight of Fear. This seems like it'd be a tamer version of it. Part of me wonders if they are specifically looking at the old crypt building, you know, Tomb Raider, the ride. I know it's for a flat ride, but the building is still there. Maybe they're looking at gutting it. I know it's being used for a haunted house, but you could take that out, put in some sort of attraction, maybe even extend the building if you needed to. That would be interesting.
It would be. It would be because, I mean, Flight of Fear is a high thrill coaster.
Yeah, so I'm imagining this would be tamer.
Yeah, I mean, I think it'd be fun, but I think it would need to be themed up pretty darn well, especially if you're gonna make it like advertised as like, oh, it's gonna be like the Mummy, like it, you know.
Right, and Cedar Fair actually seems like they're going in a more story-driven direction,
which is great.
Yeah, I love that. So like, my hope is that like with an indoor coaster, that would have so much potential that they would do a nice job with that. Like, I think about Uncharted at PortAventura, how it's this intimate, multi-dimensional coaster, really cool technology, amazing facade, but everyone who's ridden it says the inside is just empty. Like, there's nothing in it. And so that's what you don't want to happen.
Exactly.
You know? Let's move on to Cedar Point. We have the same Mach Extreme Spinner. We have the same family thrill coaster. We have the same water coaster, but there's one new addition of a Vekoma coaster.
Which is funny because I think that would be a better fit at Kings Island.
I 100% agree.
And I think that the spinner would make a lot of sense at Cedar Point.
Yes, but not the shuttle coaster.
No,
but
not that one.
But like a tilt coaster at Kings Island, like where Vortex was, that sounds amazing. That would be so cool.
And here's why. You already have Valraven at Cedar Point, which is essentially the same concept of like tilting down, hanging down at like a straight drop, and
scaring riders,
yes.
You know, with a hanging effect.
Yeah, I don't know that that's necessarily needed at Cedar Point.
Yeah, Cedar Point could benefit from a lot of things. The biggest thing I want at Cedar Point and Carowinds is a good wind coaster. That is absent from these surveys. I don't think that necessarily means that they aren't considering it at all, but maybe it's not as high of a priority.
I think that wooden coasters have become less marketable overall, which is kind of a bummer because they're fantastic and they've gotten better and better over the years. And I think people still attribute them to roughness and being uncomfortable and being kind of janky, and they don't do a whole lot.
And high maintenance costs. I mean, think about how often parks are retracking wind roller coasters. Kings Island literally just retracked the Racer earlier this off-season.
Oh, but like Mystic Timbers, like, you know, even before the Wild Mouse came to be at Cedar Point, I always thought that that's what they were going to do with the boardwalk. It was like a big wooden roller coaster or something.
I will also add that a Mach water coaster is not a bad fit for Cedar Point. They used to have a ride called Shoot the Rapids that didn't last very long. It was intimate, it was problematic, there was an accident with it. Cedar Point took it out, and maybe they're considering a Mach water coaster in the same area.
I think that'd be fun. I'm trying to think like water.
They have rapids, and then they have Snake River Falls, which is just a shoot the chutes, one big drop, and that is it. So this would be a very different experience.
Yeah. I still think that I would probably not choose that one.
Yeah.
I actually don't know if I would choose any of these necessarily for Cedar Point. Maybe the Family Thrill.
Yeah. The thing with Cedar Point is they have some family coasters. They obviously just got the Wild Mouse. That's the newest one. But prior to that, it was just Iron Dragon and then like Cedar Creek Mine Ride and then the rides in Camp Snoopy. So a lot of older rides. I think that something like this, very modern and high tech, could be cool, but I do worry about where they would fit it because Cedar Point is constricted by space. They don't have the luxury that Kings Island and Carowinds has.
No.
So you got to be creative. I think that there's definitely potential for some of these.
Oh yeah, and you know, like obviously, you know, we're coaster enthusiasts, but just because we're coaster enthusiasts doesn't mean that we're necessarily going to just be like, give us the biggest, baddest thing that you've got on your list. We're like, you know, we're trying to think more practically. Like, what really makes sense here?
If you were to consider the 4 options at each of these parks, you have to pick one from each. What do you think you would pick?
I can't move anything around. I
just
have to...
No, you have to stick with the ones they gave.
I think I'd do the Flume for Carowinds.
Okay.
Can I change the spinner? Can the spinner not be... a regular spinner, a regular extreme spinner at Kings Island.
Okay.
And then I would go for the Family Thrill at Cedar Point.
Okay.
What about you?
I like that. Yeah. If it, not the Flume at Carowinds, then the Family Thrill coaster. But I do think the Flume would be the best fit for that park. Let us know down in the comments below. What do you think of these options? What are your favorite picks?
Yeah. And why?
Yeah, I know.
State your case.
Yeah, because not everyone received these surveys. Like if you're a pass holder for Knott's Berry Farm, you're not going to get a survey about Carowinds or anything, even if you might go all the time. So yeah, make your voice heard. I'm sure Cedar Fair will see this and read all the comments.
No, like genuinely though, we have heard that, you know, people who work for different parks and stuff will like watch YouTube videos from like theme park channels to get an idea of like what people think and what people are saying. So, you
never know. You never know.
So state your case.
Yeah. Thank you all for joining us, and we'll see you next time.